So this is going to freak you out a little bit, but there's some food combinations of even healthy things that we would view as healthy when put together the wrong way or prepared the wrong way, have the ability to basically turn our brain into toast. And I'm going to share some studies with you that'll help you understand that some of these factors have the ability to affect our memory, or can even lead to dementia or Alzheimer's type issues. And when we're looking at these food combining factors, we really need to understand glycation, which is when sugars or sugars from starches sort of attach to proteins or fats. So when we toast a piece of bread, that bread turns darker and it turns harder, more stiff. Well, this can basically happen in our body. So these glycation issues, and more specifically advanced glycation end products, when those levels go too high in the body, it has the ability to lead to a lot of trouble. So let's look at this study on AGEs, as they call it, and dementia. And it can be a little bit difficult to kind of really measure the level of AGEs in the body, but in this study they used something called skin autofluorescence, where they basically shine a light into the skin and they're basically looking for like a browning of the skin, where basically your collagen is becoming glycated from too much of these AGEs. Now you can't see this from the outside, but with these tools you can see. So in this study they measured the level of AGEs in the skin using these methods, but they also did an MRI to look at the brain. And the individuals who showed more of this browning in the skin, or higher levels of AGEs, also showed more atrophy in the brain, or shrinking of the brain, along with more what they called white matter or plaquing. And we hear so much about these beta amyloid plaquing in the brain with Alzheimer's and dementia, and it starts to make sense when we look at these studies that this high level of glycation, which is basically can be viewed like biological glue just sticking proteins together in the brain, that we would see a lot more inflammation and this plaquing going on. So we'll look at this other study on AGE-induced Alzheimer's, and they say that a crucial contributing factor to the onset and development of Alzheimer's disease is AGEs. The need for focused treatment strategies is emphasized by the harmful consequences of AGEs on the brain, which include oxidative stress, inflammation, the development of beta amyloid plaques, and the creation of neurofibrillary tangles. And they go on to say that furthermore, dietary and lifestyle modifications can lower AGE production, and accumulation offers a promising avenue for preventing or slowing the progression of Alzheimer's disease. So they're helping us understand that we have the ability to restrict the damage from these AGEs by changing what we're eating. So when we're looking at these harmful combinations of foods, we need to understand that there can be exogenous AGEs, where these AGEs are in the foods that we're consuming, or there could also be endogenous AGEs that are forming in the body due to the combinations of foods that we're bringing in. So exogenous AGEs would be like in the toast, or like a steak that you seared or grilled on the barbecue and you see that black charring. That charring is those structures changing and hardening and stiffening. And this can come from that Maillard reaction when we're cooking, especially at high heat. And this is just the name of the guy who figured it out. It's spelled like Maillard when you look at it, but if you're cool, you would pronounce it Maillard, and if you're really cool, you would know the D is silent, and you would just say Maillard. So how cool you are will dictate how you say it. But when you're talking to like a really good chef, they're going to tell you how to bring flavors out in foods by these reactions in the foods, when these proteins and sugars or starches and fats are all combining together and creating these advanced glycation end products. So remember, the body is really made to deal with these AGEs. The problem is when they're coming in at a level, or they're being produced at a level in the body that the body can't deal with it, and all these tissues are starting to be glycated as well. So we want to avoid that and take steps to reduce the load that we're putting on the body, or we're really just going to age the body at an accelerated level. So there's no way to avoid AGEs. They're in most foods. The problem is that some foods have higher levels, and then when you prepare them a different way, that can really elevate the levels, and when you combine the wrong things, they can go very high as well. So we want to look at the fact that when you combine like a protein with a sugar and a starch, and then you add high dry heat, that really has the ability to elevate those AGEs. So think about like, barbecued ribs with that sugary barbecue sauce on a grill with that high dry heat and all that charring and glycation that you're going to create is going to really elevate that number of AGEs in that food that you're consuming. We could also look at normally healthy foods like, scrambled eggs with butter. And I view butter as a healthy option that we don't need to run in horror from like we thought in the 80s. I like butter a whole lot, but one mistake I was making is that I was cooking things in a pan with butter. And elevating the heat with butter like that really has the ability to really magnify those AGE levels. So we'll look at this study on advanced glycation in products in foods, and they list like hundreds of different foods and the levels of AGEs per serving in these different foods, and then different ways that you could prepare it. These AGEs are measured in what's called kilounits, and a steamed chicken breast is going to have a lot less AGEs than either a breaded and fried chicken breast or even a pan-grilled chicken breast. So you would probably view a donut as worse for you than fried chicken, but when you look at the protein and that breading and the high heat oil mixed together, then chemically that would be worse when it comes to AGE production. That's not to say that a donut is a great option, because baked foods and sugary foods like that are going to be high AGE foods. So those exogenous AGEs can be a problem that we're bringing into the body, but we also want to look at these food combination issues where some food is going to kind of combine sugars with protein or fats, or all three of those things. Think of things like, ice cream that has like sugar and all those, proteins and fats in it, or even like, sugary coffee drinks. Coffee with eggs is really not a bad combination, but if you cook those eggs in butter and then you get some fancy, foofy, fruity, chocolatey, creamy coffee drink, now you're mixing all of those sugars and the proteins and the fats from the creamer in there, and now you've created a really accelerated level of AGEs going into the system. And a lot of these commercial creamers are processed at high heats with sugar. And now you're really creating all kinds of AGEs before you ever even take a sip. So if this coffee has creamers and sugars in there, you're already adding the sugars to the fats and the proteins in the creamer. But then if you drink that coffee with some other type of protein like eggs, then you're really magnifying all the trouble as well. And don't think of this like I'm gonna drink my chocolatey, sugary coffee drink and then not be able to remember where I parked my car. The damage that's taking place takes place over years or decades. But the good news is that we have the ability to change what we're shoving down our gullet and put out the fire a little bit and allow the body to rebuild and recover itself, along with the brain. And a really problematic factor that we want to think about is high blood sugar levels. A lot of people view this high blood sugar as you're basically set up for glycation all the time. Anytime you put proteins or fats in the system, the body already has all this sugar available that's going to create all of this glycation. So if we're dealing with insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, high blood sugar, we really want to take steps to correct that issue. The good news is that you can. We'll have links in the description below for our video on improving insulin resistance. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but know that you can take steps to improve that situation. So I'm going to have a link to that study that shows that food chart in there, and you can go through there and look at different foods that are prepared different ways to figure out the best ways to do that. So just remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving anybody medical advice. I'm basically just a professional stand-up comic turned nutrition author, because when I lost my voice for 8 years and 23 different doctors couldn't help me figure that out, I had to dig for my own answers. So now for 20 years, I've been teaching health professionals in more than 40 countries how to help their clients fix the actual underlying causes of problems instead of just covering up the symptoms. But with these studies that I'm linking below, you can dig through those and find the right questions to ask your doctor. Now, the good news is that we can change the way that we're combining foods or that we're preparing foods and really bring down those AGEs in a big way. And we really want to think about wet heat versus dry heat. So when we look at this study on advanced glycation in products, they found that, cooking methods like steaming or poaching or stewing things really stop the AGE productions, where things like grilling or roasting or frying really accelerated those AGEs. But there's another hack that you can do to really bring this down a little bit. Let's look at this study on heat-induced formation of advanced glycation in product, and they found that marinating the protein in an acidic substance for about an hour before you cooked it could cut those AGE levels in half. So things like vinegar or lemon juice, so some type of marinade that contains one of those things can really raise that acidity level and reduce the AGEs. I've also seen some research indicating that cooking with black pepper and turmeric can also lower those AGEs, but I'll go into more steps like that in our video that's going to be coming out this week on lowering AGEs in your cooking and your diet. But when we're looking at these food combination issues, we really want to look at things that are combining sugars or starches with proteins or fats. And that's going to be most things that you're putting sugar and starch into. So remember, you don't have to run in horror from all of it. You just want to bring it down and put anything in your favor that you can. So if you absolutely have to have grilled pork ribs, then maybe you steam the ribs first to get them more cooked on the inside, and then you put them on the grill with some type of barbecue sauce that contains like vinegar and lemon juice. So you're at least bringing that down a few notches. Understand, you're not knocking it all out. You still have the sugars in there that are going on that high heat, but you can put things in your favor to still enjoy some of the foods that you want to enjoy, depending on how severe the AGE issue is in your body. Another important factor can be how your body is processing these foods. So if you're having concerns about cognitive decline, then you can jump over right now and check out our video on dementia starts in the gut, and that'll help you understand some digestive and gut malfunctions that can really magnify these types of troubles. I can't wait to hear about your results.